Most of us take life for granted. I don't mean that we don't enjoy it. Surveys show we generally do. But what happens when we're forced to think hard about whether we want to live? When I first heard the story of Steve Fugate, it left me close to tears. Not of grief alone, but of relief and release. Today on A World of Possibilities, hearts broken open. Suicide and the impulse to attempt it are a great unacknowledged epidemic in public health today. Suicide not only scars those who try it, but all those who care about them, often for life. But in some cases, by forcing the question, why live? It gives those who survive it a renewed commitment to life and to persuading others on the edge that it's worth the heartbreak.
That's the other end of the spectrum, man, from being so miserable and depressed enough to take your own life, is to love life. And I figured if you really love life, you're not going to take your own life.
Listen then to the story of Steve Fugate, a self-described ordinary guy who found himself thrust into the crucible of suicide and chose to express his grief and redemption in a most unusual way. Steve struggles even now to describe the impact of his children's suicides on his own attachment to life.
That's just it. It's hard for me to even put it in words. When you lose your child, what I say about someone is, if you've lost a child and you haven't taken your own life and you're not in an institution, you're doing swell. So that's what happened to me. And I lost both my children. And this is how I maintain my sanity. And it started out in 1999. My son had come over from Tampa. He had finished school over there, and he was working with me in my business. And he got a DUI. He'd never been in trouble in his whole life, ever. And his friend was celebrating having passed the bar exam in Florida, and he was smart enough not to drive because he was now an attorney. And my son, anyway, there was a wreck involved. It was a very bad DUI charge, and terrible. So anyway, he had restitution to pay. There was a car wreck involved. I came up with the idea of hiking the Appalachian Trail and him running my business that he was very accustomed to, and taking all profit while I was out on the Appalachian Trail, paying off his restitution, doing all his community service that he had been given. And then after I had done the Appalachian Trail the next year, he was going to do it. So I was halfway on the Appalachian Trail. I'd gone, I believe it was 940 miles. I'd been out there for 3 months, and my son was orchestrating my trip. And we were talking together, talking to each other every week, sometimes twice a week if I could get to a phone. And he was assuring me that everything was perfect. And he evidently was not telling the truth.
What was your business, Steve?
I owned detail shops. I owned a detail shop, car cleaning and waxing in Vero Beach, Florida for 31 years. I actually had 2 of them at one time. I had one in West Melbourne and Vero. But
and what kind of life did you have? Did you have a pretty stable life? Were you a pretty straight ahead guy at that time? You didn't consider anything to be particularly difficult or complicated in your life at the time that you?
Not really. As a matter of fact, I was a happy guy, except we had gotten a divorce. I'd been married 28 years to my son's mother, my son and daughter's mother. And we had gotten a divorce, I believe it was in 95. So it was 3 to 4 years earlier. And even though both my children were grown, I know it did affect them, because we had been together so long and raising them.
I see. So you, what motivated you to do this hike on the Appalachian Trail? That's a huge commitment.
Well, I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was some trail that us hillbillies, I'm originally from Kentucky, had used, to get to get to Kentucky. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know that it was a trail from Springer Mountain, Georgia, to Mount Katahdin, Maine, and that it stretched 2,175 miles. I was reading about it in a magazine, and at the same time, I was very concerned about my son. And I said, I can do this. I'm going to hike this Appalachian Trail and let my son, as I told earlier, run my business. And so that's how I came up with the idea of doing it. So I got all my gear together and started walking up and down ladders because we don't have any mountains in Vero Beach, Florida. And some of the highest staircases I could find.
And what were you thinking as you were hiking? And was it starting to open new horizons to you in any case? You'd never done any?
Oh, absolutely. It changed everything. I changed the friends that I had. I fired the old ones and hired new ones. People I met out on the trail. That's how radical a change it was for me. It was just the most beautiful, wonderful thing I'd ever done, and I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life, I think. And it was on July 15th. I got a call. I was at Blue Hill Summit or Blue Mountain Summit in Pennsylvania, sorry. And this guy comes up to me in a pickup truck. I was crossing a highway. And he said, are you a hiker from Florida? Is your trail name No Clue? Everybody on the Appalachian Trail has trail names, they call them. And mine was No Clue because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. So anyway, immediately it scared me to death. How would he know? And why was he looking for me? And he said, you have a phone call to make, an emergency phone call. You need to get in my truck and let me take you to make the phone call. And I, of course, started asking him a zillion questions. My heart was about to come out of my chest. And while I was walking out there, I was happy, but I was still concerned about my son. Of course, having gotten the DUI and everything. And at the time, and I didn't realize my son was an alcoholic. I didn't know it yet. And anyway, but I was very concerned about him. And I went to make the phone call. And my daughter answered the phone. She was at my place, and that right there was wrong. She was supposed to be across the state in Clearwater, where she lived. And she said, he's gone, or Stevie's gone. And I actually went back 10, 12 feet. Now, did I throw myself back? Did the emotions, was I just so out of my mind that I actually threw myself back? I don't know. All I know is I started screaming. My life was over. And I found out that my beautiful 26-year-old little boy had gone down to the beach and stuck my .38 in his mouth and ended both our lives. And I went home and I buried my boy. 9 months later, I went back and finished that damn trail.
Well, now, when you went back, your daughter was there. You went to a funeral, I take it. What was that like?
Horrible to see your flesh and blood that came from your loins lying in a box, with no life, no matter how good they try to make them look, and the pale lips, and it's horrible. And after the funeral, we went back to my place. I had a little condo here in Vero, and we went back there, and I was trying to comfort my daughter. And my daughter looked up at me and she said the strangest thing to me. She said, why couldn't you give... No, first she said, damn you. And she said, why couldn't you give Stevie your love for life? And it just shocked me because this was the only child I had left. This was it. And so I just reached and got her in my arms and started comforting her. And I said, honey, I didn't realize I had a love for life. I don't know what you mean. And she said, ask your friends, ask all your friends. Everybody knows how you are about life, and people enjoy being around you because of it. And so I did, and it was embarrassing for me, but I made a point over the next few weeks to ask some of my friends, and they all said, yeah, you do. You have a love for life. You have a joy within. So I could no longer give it to my son. This didn't come about till out on the Appalachian Trail, but I decided that I would try to give it to the children of others. Because what happened out there when I went back to finish, Mark, it came upon me that this happened to other people. And it's like the horror I was in and had been in for 9 months. I think it was 9 months lapsed before I went back to finish the Appalachian Trail. And I was just in a total state of horror all the time. I couldn't think. I was moving, making the movements, but life meant absolutely nothing to me anymore. And then it dawned on me, hell, this happens to other people. So I decided I wanted to try to do what I could to prevent it from happening from any other parent to go through the absolute horror that I was in.
How did you go about doing that? What did you decide to do?
Well, I've had an experience one night out there. I was in this, it was called the Hexagon Shelter, and it was right on the Vermont-New Hampshire line. And it was, I was looking out at the beautiful green mountains. I was all by myself. There was no one there. And I just started screaming and crying for my little boy. And just screaming, and all of a sudden I realized I wasn't alone. There was another sound, other screaming going on, and the other screaming was coyote. And the coyote were howling, and I started, it seemed to me like the louder I yelled, the louder they yelled. And I just kept doing it and just kept screaming louder and louder, which I did every night anyway. Well, sometimes I'd do it on the hour. And that was the great thing about being back out on the Appalachian Trail, Mark. I could scream and carry on all I wanted. And so anyway, I really felt like the coyote were doing, they were equal with me. No matter how loud I'd go, they seemed to be just as loud. And then I heard something else. I heard the yelping of their young, and I felt like I felt my young. And that's when it got my mind off my young and onto someone else's. Or at least that's the moment when I started thinking about this happening to other people. And I decided I wanted to do something about it. And so when I stopped walking, when I finished my hike in July, I told my daughter that I wanted to do something to help others, to help prevent, to educate young people about suicide so that parents don't have to, not just young people, anybody contemplating suicide. So I started trying to get involved with different mental health groups and even some religious groups, and none of it came about. Probably just wasn't meant to be. And so, as I've said to many people, I started my own damn group. I stuck a Love Life sign over my head because I figure that's the other end of the spectrum, man, from being so miserable and depressed enough to take your own life, is to love life. And I figured if you really love life, you're not going to take your own life. So I stuck that sign over my head. I went to San Francisco, and I walked from there to Cape Henlopen, Delaware, which was 4,858 miles. And there were some lives touched. A lot of people said that they it touched them. And there were several that even said that they had contemplated taking their own life and that my story changed their life.
Now, well, let me understand what you put a sign, on your backpack?
I put it over my head, yeah. I pulled a cart behind me when I first started to haul all my gear in and all my waters because I knew I was going to be crossing some desert areas in California and Nevada and Utah. And I took a backpack frame, an external backpack, and I attached the Love Life sign to the backpack frame.
You're listening to A World of Possibilities. After this short break, we'll return to the story of how Steve Fugate overcame tragedy and learned to love life anew. Stay with us.
We'd like to hear your thoughts about this program. Please write us at info@aworldofpossibilities.org.
Can't seem to get it started, can't seem to light the fuse, can't find the energy that I will need to use. Just wanna lay around this dusty, musty place like Miss Havisham. Woke up one morning and I just didn't give a damn. So sick and tired of this person that I am. Don't think that I can make it. Don't think that I can fake it. Such a sham. Leave me alone. Let me just lay here.
Welcome back to A World of Possibilities. I'm Mark Summer. Steve Fugate was hiking the Appalachian Trail when he learned that his son had killed himself. Devastated by his death, he resolved to do what he could to persuade others not to take the same route. And so you're walking down these highways and these city streets with a big sign that says, "Love Life."
Love life, yeah. And when you carry a sign like that, man, people stop and talk to you. Some people flip you off, I got given the finger quite a few times. But I got to where I was kind of disappointed if I didn't get it at least once a week. But, it got to be really cool. And the biggest thing I learned about those kind of things is, you know what, you get back what you put out in life, what you put out to people. I really learned it. Because when I first started walking, when I first got to California, and I first put the sign over my head, the first guy flipped me off, I swear to you, I did it back. And then I went, oh my God, I can't be doing that. Jeez, I got Love Life over my head. For God's sakes, I got to change. So I really did. I mean, I had no idea I even did that in traffic. Evidently I did, because boy, it popped right out, But so then I realized I got to start waving to people and stuff, So I would wave to people, and people would, a lot of them would give me dirty looks. So I did a psychological ploy on myself. I would, say bad things under my breath to them. I was waving, but I was going, "You creep, you jerk, what a bitch," and stuff like that. And it's and eventually I quit doing that. Eventually. I actually got to where I didn't even pay any attention to the ones that had a scowl on their face. Because that's not my problem. That's their problem.
Well, what do you think was going on for them that when they read Love Life, that they would be so negative about it? Why would they be negative about that?
It was the minority that was doing that. Let me make that clear. Most people were just totally indifferent. They don't care one way or the other. They're on their way to work so they can buy stuff. They don't care what you're doing. But I don't know. Some people are just so into wanting to be miserable that they don't like anybody suggesting otherwise to them. And that's the only study I've done on it, because I don't have the ability to change anybody but myself. So I concentrate on that one the most.
Well, tell us a story of someone who did seem to be affected. Did anybody stop what they were doing and engage with you directly?
Oh, sure. Say you're driving down the road and you're in the most miserable state of mind you've ever been in your whole life. And so much so that you've even contemplated taking your own life. I mean, it's and all of a sudden you look up and coming down the road is this absolute dingbat with Love Life over his head. Now that's the opposite end of the spectrum of life of where you happen to be at that time. And the ace in the hole I always have with those people that would stop, that were down and out. Is that I know deep down that it is an intrinsic desire to live in all of us, no matter how much they've made up their mind that they're going to end it. And so with that in my pocket, that little ace in the hole, I would engage them. People would stop to talk to me, and not all people stopped because they were having emotional problems. I mean, people would talk just to shoot the breeze, just to tell me how much they love life. But I have had them stop, like one young lady down in South Florida, when I was starting my walk around the United States. She she pulled up in her car and she said, I had to tell you what you did for me. And she started crying, and then she pulled out and she left. And I'm like, what? And I was having a week. I had just started, and I was having a week of thinking, am I really even supposed to be out here? I mean, is this really a smart thing to do? You know? And this was my second walk. And so, anyway, so she left. But the next day she came back. And she said, look, I just couldn't leave without telling you what happened. She said, I saw you on Friday. And she said, and I saw your sign, Love Life. And I had to turn my car around 4 times to look at it. And then she started crying again. And she told me that she was on her way to her motel room. She had everything set up to take her own life. And that my sign caused her to think about her 2 little girls that she had at home, and that the possibility that what she was about to do might keep them from loving life. So then I knew to keep walking, and I walked on and walked around the United States, 9,727 miles, I think it was.
I remember a story that you told on a different program about a trucker who stopped.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, tell us about him.
Okay, he pulled his truck over, and he gets out and he goes, love life, huh? And he had this look in his eyes, and I've seen that look before, and I can't describe it. It's just that I've dealt with this many, many times, and I've seen these people down and out. And anyway, he said, love life, huh? Well, I don't love life. And he started crying, and this man's in his late 40s probably, and he's a big man, a big burly man. And he started crying, and he said, I don't love life at all, and I'm thinking about taking my life. And I said, no, you're not. You're not going to take your own life. Yeah, I'm really thinking about it. And I said, well, you're not going to do it. Let me tell you why you're not going to do it. Let me tell you who you just ran into, pal. I said, and so I started telling him. I said, it was no coincidence. You ran into a guy that is out here walking because his son took his own life. And I said, so you're not going to take your own life. I'm assured of that. And he said, no, I really think I am. My wife left me. She has a new boyfriend. He got caught cheating on his wife. And she left him, got a new boyfriend, and now she liked the boyfriend better than him. And I said, you still are not going to take your own life because you do not have the right to take your own life. It does not belong just to you. It belongs to the people that love you. And so he says to me, well, I suppose it would really hurt my 21-year-old daughter and my 19-year-old son. I said, excuse me? And I put my finger right on his chest, and I said, let me tell you something, pal. My little boy went out, left this earth ignorant. He went out ignorant of what he was about to do to me, his mother, and his sister, and the rest of his family, and his friends. And I said, and you, my friend, are not going out ignorant because I'm going to make sure you know. And I told him this story. I said, I was in Maine. I came out of a convenience store. A man walked up to me, seen my sign leaning up against the wall. And he said, he got out of a BMW SUV, had a Rolex watch on his wrist. That tells me the man was successful. But he asked me what his sign was about, love life. And I explained to him I had lost my son to suicide. And he starts telling me he had lost his father to suicide when he was 12. He was 62 years old. And as he starts crying right there in the middle of the day in this parking lot, right in front of everybody. And he starts crying. And I told this gentleman in Pennsylvania, so that's 60 years or 50 years had passed. And I said, and look what it did to that man. And so that's what you're going to do to your children, right? I said, shame on you. Shame on you. And I told him that I loved him. His children loved him. Everybody loved him. Everybody, he was going to be okay. And he said, well, I'm really going to try. And my phone went out of whack. And I went up into Maine. And I was up there, stayed with a friend for a month. And my Verizon replaced my phone. And so I had buku voicemail on there. And on there somewhere was this, he said, hey, I'm the Pennsylvania truck driver, dude, and I just want you to know that your words went home. And he said, "You were right, man. I got my act together, man. And it was about my kids. Thank you." So, and the NPR program that you mentioned is like the Hearing Voices program. There have now been 20 people that have said they didn't take their life because of those words, that you do not have the right to take your own life. It does not belong just to you. And there, I think it's 6 of them, and possibly 7, that said they were in the very act of doing it when those words came on and changed their mind.
I have to tell you a thing or two just personally about how it affected me, and I can't say why it was so deep because I wasn't in despair at the time that I heard it, but I had had losses in my own family due to suicide, and they challenged me to ask myself whether I wanted to continue to live. And, I think people don't normally ask themselves that question.
No.
And I decided at that point that if I was going to continue to live, I would do so without any reservations at all. I would live out my dreams in full and live with no regrets. It changed my life for the better. And when I heard your story and I saw how you had opened up in a combination of your hiking on the Appalachian Trail and then this devastating change, your daughter must have had a really important impact on you in saying, "Dad, you didn't teach him how to love life, and you didn't even know you did." But that's a great gift, Steve, to be able to love life and then to be able to communicate that. Look at what you've affected far more people than you know, I am absolutely sure.
Thank you so much. And you just said something so profound that really echoes what I was saying about you do not have the right to take your own life. It doesn't belong just to you. What you said that these suicides in your life had you thinking, do I want to go on and live? You see what it does? That's what it does. It caused my daughter to get so depressed in life, having lost her little brother, that even after she had her own child, was in a happy marriage and everything, she still could not get it together. She was diagnosed with MS. And, I lost her too. I lost her in 2005. And it was called an accidental drug overdose.
Do you think it was accidental?
Yes, it was accidental because she had a beautiful little girl. But I think that she was being given very strong drugs because of the MS, and I guess she doubled up on them, did something. I'm not sure yet, but the jury is still out on that. My son-in-law has investigations going on with that. But yes, it was accidental. But I also think that the loss of her little brother caused her to be careless, caused her to always want to look at something else other than the death of your little brother. I think that's the best way I could say it.
Steve Fugate, who was struck by suicide at close range and chose a most unusual way to reaffirm the value of life. You're listening to A World of Possibilities. We'll continue our conversation when we return from this short break.
Personally, I think a bad mood is selfish. I think it's very self-centered because, number one, you are causing the people around you, you're restricting their freedom. You're causing them to act differently in front of you. And number two is you are denying others the beauty of who you really are.
Stay with us.
To receive a weekly podcast of this program, find us in the iTunes Store or follow the link at aworldofpossibilities.org.
I want to live in the world, not inside my head. I want to live in the world. I want to stand and be counted. with the hopeful and the willing, with the open and the strong, with the voices in the darkness, fashioning daylight out of song, and the millions of lovers alive in the world.
It's a world of possibilities, and I'm Mark Summer. This week with another in our continuing series we call Love Life. This is where we probe the stories of individuals and communities that have not only survived adversity, but in the process have affirmed the value of life and passed that love on to others as a gift to the wider world. Our guest today, Steve Fugate, is an auto detailer from Kentucky. He endured the suicide of his son, only to be struck a few years later by his daughter's death by accidental overdose. Reeling from this tandem tragedy, Steve ultimately rallied and found a new life purpose by doing all he can to persuade other young people not to take their lives. Why do you think it is that so few people seem to be able to make contact with their own love of life?
People have gotten today, they have another interest. It's called economic bondage. And because they have to buy the new speedboat, the new this, the new that, the new laptop, it's got to be the best of the best. You know the story. And it's like, this is how I break down America as I saw it coming to me on their cell phones. And those are the only times I almost lost my life, by the way, was a person on the cell phone that almost creamed me. Stop using your cell phones while you drive, folks. It sucks. And so I've almost died from it a few times. But anyway, this is my breakdown. 85% of Americans, now remember, folks, this is my personal breakdown. And 85% are indifferent, the economic bondage thing, you know. And about 13.5% are the greatest, happiest, go-lucky people in the world. They stop and want to know what I'm doing. And in that category, I even put the people going to work in the morning that wave vigorously, you know, all the way to people that will stop and even invite me into their home for dinner and even spending the night. And so I call them the 13.5%. And I say that it's 13.5% because I can't believe that it is in a 2 full percent of Americans that would adhere to evil. In other words, wish to do me bodily harm, because I've walked 26,000 miles of the United States and I've never had a hair on my head harmed. So that's my breakdown. And I hope that helps answer your question.
I wonder whether even those who are most hostile are suppressing a profound ambivalence of their own, or a profound unhappiness they just don't want to look at?
I don't know, but you know, there's a little phrase that says, if you want to be happy in this life, forget about yourself. And that's the best advice there is. That's how I got my eyes off my own grief. My heart was crushed, ripped out of me. I not only lost my only son, I lost my only daughter. I didn't lose both my kids. I lost all of my children. They're gone. And it's like the only way I can have peace and keep with my joy, my pace of happiness I've had, is to reach out to others, to help others. And it's like, you know, it's like, it's self-centered when we start saying, nobody loves me, I'm not good enough. You know, you're talking about self there. You got to get your eyes off of self and get them on to other people, helping others. Personally, I think a bad mood is selfish. I think it's very self-centered because, number one, you are causing the people around you, you're restricting their freedom. You're causing them to act differently in front of you. And number two, but it's just as important, is you are denying others the beauty of who you really are. So, we can't allow ourselves to get down. I'm happy all the time, man.
You're happy all the time.
I'm happy all the time. Look, I have my grief. I have my moments when I call them panic attacks. When I get attacked with the fact that my 2 babies are no longer with me. They're not here in person. I can't touch them. But I still have an immense joy. I know that that's only a passing moment. I'm not going to live in that moment. I'm not going to stay there. Why? Because my 2 children adored their father. My 2 children do not want their father miserable in any way. My endeavor in life, Mark, is to make my babies proud of their daddy. And that's what I set out to do. And I make them proud by helping others. As I said, I can't give it to my children, so I want to give it to other people's children. And just remember, if you're 70 years old and your mama's still alive, you're her baby. So, you know.
So, are you continuing to walk the country?
Right now, I'm a resting, man. It feels good. I got me a little apartment here in beautiful Vero Beach. By the way, I've walked through approximately 1,800 cities, towns, and villages, and Vero Beach is my favorite. I love this. I love Florida with a passion. I did enjoy California, though, I got to tell y'all. I did. I've walked in it, 3 times now, I think. Yeah, 3 times I've walked the state of California.
Well, now, when you're walking down the road and it comes towards the end of the day, don't you begin to wonder, where am I going to stay tonight? And am I going to be comfortable?
No, why do I do that? I have a tent on my back. I've got a nice sleeping mat, Thermarest, great thing, so comfortable. And it's like I pitch my tent, I go to the side of the road. You wouldn't believe some of the places I've stayed. I mean, just incredible, you know. One time... Should I tell this? Yeah, I'm going to tell this. But I can't think the name of the town. It was in Kentucky, the town Henderson, Kentucky, across the river from Anderson, Indiana. And I walked up to these policemen. I wanted to spend the night there because I had a mail drop. My daughter was sending me a mail drop, a package of much-needed supplies and some traveler's checks, what have you. I don't know what was in it. But anyway, I needed it. And... I got there too late. The post office was closed. So I needed to find a place there in Henderson, Kentucky. And I went up to the policemen, and a couple of them, and they were quite rude, actually, which really bothered me because I was born in Kentucky. But anyway, they wouldn't help me at all. And it was right on the Ohio River. So I walked down, and there was this parking area where everybody parks, and it was all gravel and stuff. And I looked, and there was no place suitable to pitch my tent. And then I was looking back to my left, and I looked down the river, and there was this beautiful patch of green behind this building. And so I went there. And do you know what the building was? It was the police station. And I pitched the tent between to look like 2 AC units. And there was nobody back there, and I was below the window. And I swear to you, it was the only place I could find. It was getting dark. I was desperate, and I thought it was kind of novel. And so anyway, the next morning I get up, and I've got my tent and everything. All traces of me have disappeared. And and I'm walking over to the post office, and one of the very officers that had ignored me was watching me walk out from behind the police station. And I said, "Good morning, sir. How are you this bright morning?" And he just stared at me. I don't know if he had any idea what I had done. But anyway, I thought that was for my own pleasure. It was novel. So then I went and got my package and went on about my business.
You know, there's a phrase about the kindness of strangers. Have you ever found that to be so in your wanderings?
Oh, it's incredible. The kindness in strangers. It's just the most beautiful thing. What is that? It's the kindness is the shadow of God in man. And I just found, oh my God, it was incredible. People would stop and the things they would do for you, you know. And I've just had so many. take me into their home, and people offer you rides all the time. And I usually turned them down unless I was about to go through one of California's dangerous tunnels. It's horrible. You come in there in 2 semi-trucks, I just kissed my butt goodbye. I was gone. That was it. And there was nowhere to go, And it's like, adios, senor, you're out of here. But I made it through, And then, but the only thing scarier than that was driving in L.A. I volunteered like an idiot when I was walking through that area, a friend to help him deliver a couple cars. And that is where that by the grace of God phrase was invented, was driving in L.A. That's scary. So anyway.
So I just want to ask you a question or two about why you chose that phrase, love life. It's almost like you were, it was almost like the 11th commandment.
I all I know is I was on my treadmill, and I had decided, because I couldn't get anybody to work with me on spreading my message, and I didn't even know what my message was really, just that I wanted to help people to not, not only not commit suicide. That seems to be what I'm associated with the most, but I really just want to be associated with love life, because I don't want people becoming alcoholics, drug addicts, manic depressants. I don't want them doing anything that takes them away from their loved ones and keeps them from loving life. So I decided, being as I couldn't do that, I was going to satisfy my own personal pleasures. I had already hiked the Appalachian Trail, so now I decided I would go to California and do the Pacific Crest Trail all the way up to Washington and the Canadian border, through the beautiful Sierras and through the Cascades. And so I set my mind to that. I saved up a bunch of money and was going to do it, and I was on my treadmill practicing, and this is the truth. A voice from somewhere, may have been my own imagination. Someone told me once they called it the wee small voice, whatever that is. But this voice said, you should walk across America. And I told the voice to go to hell, because I wasn't about to walk across America and smell spent petroleum fumes and all that other crap and put up with those charging metal steeds. I'm not going to do that when I can be walking through California's beautiful Sierras, right? What am I, nuts? No, I'm not nuts. So I said no, and I fought with that voice for like 3 weeks. And that voice wouldn't leave me alone. So I kind of met it halfway, and I said, I'll do the American Discovery Trail, which goes across the United States. So it didn't really work to do the American Discovery Trail. I got on it as much as I could, but it was only on computers, I discovered. So at the same time, then I got back on my treadmill. I felt it was safe, and the voice wouldn't bother me anymore. And the voice said, you're going to carry a sign. And I said, what do you want me to put on it? Kick me? And because I was pissed at the whole idea. So anyway, and I cannot answer directly how I came up with Love Life. It's just that I was, after 3 weeks of that kept bombarding me, I came up with Love Life, and it was the light bulb over my head.
You're listening to A World of Possibilities. We'll return to Steve Fugate's story of suicide and redemption when we return from this short break. Stay with us.
Take advantage of our many online resources, including podcasts and full-length guest interviews at aworldofpossibilities.org. We're also on iTunes U. Just open iTunes and search for A World of Possibilities.
Memories are a powerful force. They often help us carry on. Dark clouds will not hold us back. The darkness comes before the dawn. Angry recollections, painful rejections, they make us strong, they give us song, we all belong.
You're listening to A World of Possibilities, and I'm Mark Summer. When we left off, Steve Fugate was explaining how he came up with the term love life that he attached as a sign on his backpack frame while hiking the streets and highways of America. What I hear in love life is something that's both an invitation and a commandment. And it's
Wow.
and to me it says something about realistically, life doesn't always give you what you want. In fact, a lot of the time it gives you that kick in the teeth or that punch in the groin, and you go, "Oh God, how can I possibly love this?" And yet it's all the more important to love it even when that happens, especially when that happens.
That is so well put. It's like, you know what? Invariably, when I speak to some high school, some kid will raise their hand, some young man, thinks he's asking this most profound question. And he says, "What is life, dude?" And I go, "Oh, that's that air you feel on your upper lip when you wake up. And that's it." And it's a gift. And people say, "Oh, it's a gift from God." No, it's a gift, even if you don't believe in God. It's a gift, period. And it's like, and we need to appreciate it, fall in love with the act of breathing. And when you do that, I tell young people, look, treat him like he's some guy that you see when you wake up in your room. He'll be sitting on the end of your bed or in a chair somewhere. And it's like, reach over and grab him right by the throat and make him do everything you want him to do that day. And do that every day, and pretty soon he'll get used to it, and he'll do exactly what you want him to do without having to do that. It becomes automatic. And it's like life is, you just love it in spite of it. You don't say, "Woe is me." It's like people say, "Come on, Steve, you must have some kind of problem. When you wake up, you have problems." I go, "Okay, say I wake up with a little problem. Of course I have little problems. But like I already said about a bad mood, it's selfish. So I don't want to do that. So I have a little problem. So say I go tell you about my problem. Now I got to listen to your crap. I started out, I only had one problem. Now I got two. And if you have a friend with a problem, a brother-in-law with a problem, you could leave there with 5 or 6 problems. Just wake up, fall in love with the act of breathing, let your little problem, it'll take care of itself. And if it doesn't, somebody will come along that really does want to hear it. Something will happen. And it's like, that's the way I treat life.
I love that phrase, fall in love with the act of breathing.
It's just that simple. Because what else is there? When you start attaching other things to it, it gets too complicated to love. You got to start out easy on anything you do. When you become an electrician, you don't jump right in and start hooking, 440s together or whatever together. You just don't do that. And you have to test the water first. So you start by loving the act of breathing. And somebody said, "Well, there's just a lot of a-holes in life. How do you deal with them?" And I said, I think it's, wasn't it that great philosopher Ted Nugent that said, when the a-holes quit thinking you're an a-hole, you might be becoming an a-hole. So it's like somebody thinks I am one too, But I told him, you fall in love with the act of breathing, and then you fall so much in love with that, pretty soon you don't care about the other person. You even start loving the a-holes.
Well, now that takes some doing.
Well, yeah, it does, but it's like I can't change anybody but myself. It's a total waste of energy for me to try to change anyone. That's why I don't take on any label whatsoever in life. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Democrat, a Republican, a Baptist, a Christian, a Catholic, a Methodist. I'm nothing. I'm not a moderate. I'm not an independent. I have no labels. I'm Steve Fugate. I was born in America, and if I want to, I can change that.
Steve, I interview people all over the world and in very different circumstances. And I have found one of the great intriguing mysteries of this interview process is that once in a while I will encounter someone whose story is absolutely devastating, like yours, but different circumstances. For example, a woman who was abducted when she was just 14 years old by the Lord's Resistance Army in northern Uganda, made a sex slave in Sudan for 8 years.
Oh, my God.
Her mother went around the world, met with President Clinton and the head of the UN and all kinds of other people trying to get her and other children freed. In the end, she walked into freedom on her own.
Oh, my God.
And the process of freeing herself gave her such a sense of the preciousness of life that she has both this sense of purpose like yours and this sense of joy that someone who had not gone through anything like that, who'd lived a normal life, will never know. And to me, it's a mystery that while misfortune and adversity often break people, some people, it doesn't break. It just...
I don't know. I of course, none of us can really know the answer to that. And some people, the other people, I can only deal with myself. Like I said, I can't change anyone but me. But that woman and I share the same thing. Number one, we both have experiences that we wish we never had. But what we have to offer others is perspective. You look at her story and you go, oh my God, I am so blessed. I am so wonderful, and life is so good to me. I don't have to go through what that precious dear child had to go through. Or my God, that man doesn't have his children. His babies are gone. I don't have to go through that. I ran into a woman up in Maine, and she said, you met my husband at an ice cream stand the other day, and said, I just wanted to thank you. After talking to you, he went right straight and ended a years-old feud he had ongoing with his own son, because it put it in perspective. And I'm sure that precious woman that you talked to, many, many people have changed their way of thinking and their views just in perspective of looking at what happened to her. Bless her heart.
It sounds like you have the life you didn't realize you really wanted, but it's the life that you were meant for.
You know what? Now that you said that, like I said, this is an experience I wish to anything I didn't have. But you know what? I'm perfect for this job because, number one, my mother lost 2 children. She lost her precious 18-month-old little boy, and then she lost my 14-year-old twin sister. And my mother, with her horrible, horrible grief, went inside herself and near destroyed herself, and that her life and that of mine and my siblings. And we forgive her totally and completely. You can never judge a human being on how they deal with the grief of their child. But in seeing what my mother did, I knew what not to do. And so I focused, like I said, on making my children proud and helping out those of the children of others.
Steve Fugate, auto detailer and love life pilgrim. They say whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I've always marveled at the capacity of some few among us not to be embittered by tragedy or misfortune, but to be deepened and gentled by it into a renewed appreciation for life. How is it that what hardens some softens others? What can we learn from these so-called thrivers that could help us live our own lives with a keener appreciation for its fleeting joys and enduring satisfactions? The psychiatric profession is understandably focused on our pathologies, the ways we go wrong in response to life's vicissitudes. But might it also make sense to study what enables some individuals, and even whole communities, to respond to adversity with resilience and a renewed commitment to life? In upcoming programs, we'll hear more stories of thrivers in a wide range of circumstances. We invite you to tell us of other individuals and communities that have transformed tragic loss into a new appreciation for life. God knows we could all use some good news for a change. Not the kind that denies life's adversities, but the kind that fully acknowledges its tragic dimensions and nonetheless embraces it whole. Email us with your stories at info@aworldofpossibilities.org or find us on Facebook. We look forward to hearing your stories and airing some of them on this program. I'm Mark Summer, and this has been A World of Possibilities. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to A World of Possibilities with host and executive producer Mark Summer. The recording engineer is Mike Schwartz, associate producers Naima Didi and Matt Fiddler. The senior producer is Greg McVicker, and I'm Gabriela Castellan. Take advantage of our many online resources, including podcasts and full-length guest interviews at aworldofpossibilities.org. We're also on iTunes U. Just open iTunes and search for A World of Possibilities. We get support from Stream Guys, professional streaming media services, streaming audio and video for social change since 2000.